you. So thank you for everybody for joining us today. We have gorgeous Corina Harris, who's going to share with us today about oneness and her understanding and learnings around being in a beautiful state. And I don't actually know Corina very well. We did have the chance to connect at Trainer Academy this year in the US. And I've always observed her and felt a real sense of calm around her. And I didn't really know where that came from or what that was. But when I spoke with her and we spent a bit of time together this year at Trainer Academy, I realized it was actually choice. Like the choice of how she shows up, the choice of how she sees other people, the choice of how she sees things. And I got even more curious. So I'm personally really excited to hear what you have to say today, Corina. And I know that when we spoke about who we'd like to teach on this call, your name came up a number of times from a number of people. So I'd just like to say welcome. Thank you for getting up so early to share with us, and we look forward to hearing your training today. So thank you.
I'm honestly so excited to be on the call because it really allowed me the opportunity to go through all my books again, and you get in your own habits and patterns. And so I've done lots of different meditations, or will focus on particular ones since leaving oneness in India, but going through the notes again, I was like, oh, I forgot about this. So it was it was really nice to be able to just connect deeper with that content. And I wouldn't have done it if you guys hadn't have called me, and it just reminded me of why this stuff is so important. So I know that some of you, have you all done the beautiful state training with Tad? Yeah. So I don't know, can I ask from your own, do you feel like it's made a change for you having done that training?
I do, totally. For me, I absolutely do. Yes.
Yeah, I have been the same. I think it was very profound in even since it came into the environment about 5 years ago. I've noticed a huge difference, particularly in how connected I feel in the trainer body, and the trainer body with the senior leader body and the leadership team. I think we are more connected as one from the time that came in.
So for me, it was that, like that, I've been focusing on the beautiful state. I remember the first time Tony shared it and thinking it was a great concept, but not really getting it. I would say there are lots of areas in my life where I'm a slow learner. But it was doing the beautiful state. I went a couple of times to have the oneness people teach it when they came into Australia, and I also did the one with Tad. But each time, to me, it reaffirms, it's like going to a Tony Robbins event. The more you practice it, the better it gets, the more ingrained it becomes as a part of your life. But the one thing I will say is, if you do ever get an opportunity to do one of the O&O courses, because they obviously have more time, I love that they get to bring a bit more of that meditative processes into the journey, which I personally found quite transformational, because you are getting out of your head then and more into your heart. And so for me, how would I say, like, what's changed? Or I don't know what your interpretation of is of the beautiful state, if it's just something you train your mind to focus on. But I really do believe that it's something that is a choice for a way of life. So I love how Jackie said that before, about just choosing the way you look at life. Because I think it's for all of us who come into the Robbins world, we're often in that achiever mode. And so I think in the achiever mode somewhere, and certainly I had this interpretation, achiever equals stress. Stress somehow seems to be a part of achievement. And I don't think I ever saw a life or knew a life of achievement without stress. And the big word that they use in the O&O Academy is how stress really is just eye consciousness. So anytime you focus on yourself is when you're in stress. You cannot be in stress when you're in one consciousness. Because, and they talk about how there's two sources of pain. The pain is that causes stress in our life is the source of pain is stress is caused by a focus of something on the past. And fear is something that you focus about in the future. So anytime you're either thinking about the future, it's fear of something going to happen or it might happen. It can be based on past reference, but it's still a fear. Or it'll be about something about the past, a thought about an event of some kind, and that's the stress. And so your whole goal is to, if you're truly living in a beautiful state, you're living in the now. And so I guess that's why, Tony talks about that, how the art of fulfillment is really an art. That's the bit where only you can do that for you. Only you can bring yourself into the state of the present. And I remember being the first time in India, I've gone twice, and doing one of their meditations, and you had to walk around in the garden. And I remember thinking how silly I felt or stupid I felt. Look at the tree, look at the sunshine for 20 minutes with these strangers all doing the course together. And I'm walking around clearly in my head going, look at the tree, look at the leaves, but forcing myself to do it because that's not a state of being, like I go to the beach and I love nature. I really love going to the ocean. Doris, I see, always goes hiking or walking in the forest. That seems to be a happy place for you. And so, but I never really paused to look at every single minute thing in my surroundings, which was really the goal of this activity when they sent us outside. And so whilst I felt silly at first, the more I did it, I really did find my mind slowing down. And so what it taught me was, if you really focus to what's around us, and often we are so great at achieving, we miss the simplicity of the moment. And I think when you realize, when you bring yourself to the present and you slow down, you can notice so many wonderful things. But when we're outcome orientated, but I think from a place of stress, and that's the key distinction. That's what I love, what Tony brought into it. And it, even with the beautiful state training that has been led by Tad, which is beautiful, is they're focused on getting the best out of the program in the shortest and most concise amount of time. And it can, obviously there's layers, you can take yourself deeper if you choose to, and the more associated you get to the moment, the deeper the learning, which is why Tony always does his processes where he gets us, into an emotional state, or when we do a goal setting, we're trying to link ourselves to an emotion because that's what's lasting. That's going to be your leverage for the future. So the emotions are the key. That's what I'm coming to. And so, but to be in that beautiful state, you have to slow yourself down and allow yourself to feel and observe what you're feeling. And so one of the phrases that I really resisted that they taught me in India a long time was the word suffering. I just couldn't stand the word suffering. Why would I ever choose to use the word suffering? My mind was, my achievement mind said that. But they really talk about how, well, you're either in a beautiful state or you're suffering, right? And so suffering is anytime you're feeling stress, pain, hurt, anger. I guess for me, any emotion that's other than neutral, so that goes down in the scale. And so you only suffer when you're focusing on the self. So to bring yourself out of that suffering is to bring yourself back into the moment. And that will be as simple as, one of the steps they do is they said, one of the techniques when you're in suffering and to get yourself out of stress, you just do the 3 conscious breaths. And so the 3 conscious breaths are: inhale, focus first on bringing awareness to your diaphragm and just observe the belly moving in and out. So really as simple as that. So breathe in and out and bring your awareness to your diaphragm. And then the second part is inhale with the ratio of inhale of 1, exhale on the count of 2. So 1, exhale, 1, 2, and just bring your awareness to that. And so then you're just bringing your attention to that. And when you're doing that, just through the simple process of bringing awareness to your physical body in the now, notice what's the feeling that's coming up. And so it's either a association to the past or it's a fear of the future. And so their philosophy really is, if you become present to that emotion, then you have the ability to dissolve it. And then as you go on through the courses that you do, like the first one is the beautiful state is like a 2-day program. Then they have, like, you go to India, there's a 5-day program or a 7-day or a 10-day program. You're really just taken more into the process of looking at the parts that cause you stress. So if I were to simplify it, so just think of an area of your life that, or not an area, think of a thing, a moment, or a person that causes you stress. And then if you think about them, visualize that in front of you, just the image of that scenario. And then if you really sit with it, think about, but what is it that I'm feeling? Because it's never, the whole teaching is, it's never the external thing. So it's never that situation that you're thinking of that's really causing you stress, unless you're in physical harm, right? So let's remove let's say you're not in physical harm in that moment, and now it's either a memory of the past, which means you're no longer in harm, it's the memory that's causing you stress, or it's a person that causes you frustration or anger or an emotion that you don't want to have. What is it that you're feeling in relation to them? Because it's your interpretation that causes the harm for you. And so it's all about creating inner peace within you, is noticing that it's your reaction that's causing your stress, not the situation, if that makes sense. And so merely just the looking at it, and it kind of reminds me in a way of when Tony does the Dickens. And as you're lying there on the ground, is that the Dickens at the end, where you're in the spaceship and you're seeing the memories go by? It's almost like you look at the scenario in front of you going, okay, this person, let's say for me, my mum and I, sometimes we cause each other stress. So let's say I go, okay, here's my mum, she's causing me stress. In my mind, straight away, I have to go to a memory or something that I'm focusing about her that's causing her stress. So see it like a slideshow in front of my face and go, okay, it's this habit that, let me think of one, with her. oh, she needs to be right. So I now look at her need to be right, that's causing me stress. But now I look at myself going, well, what is it about her need to be right that causes me stress? I go, well, it's my need to be right that's causing stress. So I almost look at the layers underneath to go, what's the truth? What is it underneath that's causing me stress in relationship to my association with mum? Am I making sense? And so when I do that, all of a sudden, I can just realize the stupidity of it. Because it started off with my mum causes me stress. But then I look at the truth, which is I see that it's her needing to be right that causes me stress. And underneath that, I see the truth is it's my struggle for needing to be right when I'm with her that causes me stress. And when you can get to the core, you realize, well, it's just a thought. It's just a self-image of yourself. It's not real. Hi, good morning. I've woken up a little munchkin in the house.
Morning.
Mommy's doing a call. So if you want to stay up, you just read for a second.
I can't wait.
I promise we can read later. Okay. Sorry. Clearly, I've been speaking very loudly. Sorry, I'll just slide the door shut. It's 6:30 here in the morning, so they're normally still asleep. So that's how you dissolve it, is just to see your expression in the moment. Just the awareness of it is enough. It's some of the things that I wrote down that reminded me. So, for example, some truths that you need to know for yourself that they teach. So a single action cannot define the entirety of me. So when we have stress in the past, let's say you have a memory of something that happened, and let's say it was a judgment of yourself, like you could have handled that better, or you regret doing something. We bring it, that regret, in, if we carry it on, we bring it into the present. But the reality is the moment happened, you don't have to carry on the regret or the pain anymore. And somehow we let that moment define us as a part of an attachment of ourselves, our identity. They will call it the I identity. But the reality is that moment in time cannot define the essence of who we are. But we do it because, and I think, I almost wonder if it's part of our desire to learn from our mistakes, our achiever model coming in again, that if we somehow, or if it's part of my Christian upbringing, if we remember the pain of the past or our past actions and events, that stops us from doing it again in the future. But what's the truth? Is that really valuable if what you're doing is bringing stress into your current life? What if there was a way for you to acknowledge a bad memory or something you feel guilty about in the past, and just to truly dissolve that emotion of pain? Is what they're teaching. And so that now when you have a memory, there's not a reaction or a feeling anymore. If there is, the ideal on your path of becoming more in a beautiful state would be see the memory for what it truly is, see the truth that it's just a memory and it's not a reflection of who we are. And in being with it, in being present with it, by seeing the truth of that memory, you can just let it go. And if you're not willing to let it go, question why we're not willing to let it go. What is it? What need is it meeting? What benefit? Because it will have a benefit somewhere, but maybe it's time to let it go. And so as part of the truth teaching, it says, so when the truth contradicts a self-image, we resist the truth and we live in untruth. So for me, that means, let's say I see...
That again, please.
So when the truth contradicts a self-image, we resist the truth and we live in untruth. So, and this is part of that accepting all the personalities of yourself in the steps of the highest consciousness. So we all have an image of ourselves as who we are. And to have wholeness and oneness, you need to accept all of yourself. And so, for example, I identify myself as a kind person, and when I do things that are not kind, I would reject that, or I feel guilt about it. Because then I go, that's not who I am, right? Your life condition has to equal your blueprint, kind of thing. So I see myself as kind. When I'm not, I then associate pain to that action. But so now, because I associate pain to that, I'm not living in the real moment, because now I'm living in the pain of what I've done. And so I'm not truly being who I am. I'm now reacting from a past memory. So, so they say that a mind that lives in untruth is a mind that lives in the past. So that's a limited mind. And so the only way to bring yourself back to reality is to bring yourself in the present again. And I think the pure act of recognizing, okay, I'm not embracing, I've made that moment of unkindness and attaching it to me, and realizing that that's not the truth is enough to dissolve it. So your job is just to bring into your awareness what's causing you triggers, or what's causing you to feel not in a beautiful state, and then to go, what's the truth behind it? Oh, well, I attached it to my identity, but what's the truth? That's not really who I am. It's a moment in time. And the moment is probably usually in the past. In which case, let it go. The past is gone. And so then our job is then to bring ourselves back into a beautiful state through 3 conscious breaths, through meditations. For me personally, when I think about COVID sometimes, and the uncertainty of it, then I know for me now I'm what they will call fear-based suffering of the future. Well, none of it's real because we can't control anything, right? They're all just projections. So the only thing I can do is to bring myself to the present again with the 3 conscious breaths, or with doing things throughout the day that bring me back into presence. So my versions are like, if you have priming, you do your priming. I believe meditation is such a good pathway for that, for just stilling the brain. The science is there, but I really do feel the shift for how the mind slows down when I do it more. I read an interesting article that said they've discovered now with science that the simple act of looking at something from nature throughout the day, even if you're in an office environment, if you can see sky, water, or a plant, that slows your brain down. So it doesn't matter if you live in an urban world or in nature, if you can look at a form of nature in front of you, that stills the brain. So I think it's so key that you find that we can, no matter where we are, we can all have a little living plant in our house, or have images. Like I love images, photos of the ocean. That always just stills me. So we can all do that, have little triggers around us to bring us back into a calm place. Yes, so I think we need rituals to remind us throughout the day, because we're all going to get busy and in do mode. One of my favorite little mini meditations that they have, that they taught in India, is and it's not even really a meditation, it's a mindful act, I guess, is think of one thing that causes you stress. And can you all think of one thing? And so now I want you to close your eyes and imagine your third eye, so that place between your eyebrows. And imagine with that thought, you now have a candlestick, an old school candle, and you imagine the flame going inside the center of your brain. And so inside the center of your brain, it might just be dark, and see how the candle's light now illuminates all of the darkness, and the light gets brighter and brighter until your brain is completely filled with white light. And so you just sit there and you pause with that, and you do lots of breath. And just that act of doing that process usually dissolves the feeling to that one event that caused you stress. Just creates a stillness. And that's a really easy thing that you can do anyway. I do that one a lot.
Corina, can I ask you a question?
Mm.
You said, you do throughout the day, you plan little rituals. Do you remind yourself of doing that? Is it so habitual? Do you have different things? Because, I always think I'm going to do it and then I don't do it. So it never becomes a ritual, really. Do you?
Yes, I think the same. I think I need to do it and then I don't. Many things, so my ideal is always to meditate each day, and I don't meditate each day. But I will notice my state and go, okay, poor state, low quality consciousness right now. So what am I going to do? Breathe. The easiest go-to straight away is just notice the breath and bringing myself back to the breath. What's happened, I think, since India is I become more aware of when I am in stress. And so really that is what the beautiful state is. When Tony says, give yourself 3 seconds, noticing when I'm in stress, looking at the stupidity of it, because it's either suffering, that silly word, or it's a fear. And it's almost, if you look at it as just simply, well, I'm suffering, I'm causing suffering, not to anyone else, sometimes to somebody else, like my family around me. If I'm suffering, I cause them suffering, just by the sheer fact that my consciousness is low and they're getting my reaction. So I just remind myself with breath, slowing down. Or the other thing is sometimes I'll leave the room for 3 seconds and come back in after I've taken some breaths and come back. But I think it just starting with the moment you start noticing when you're not in a positive state anymore. That's the beginning of it. And then doing the breaths. And the more you do it, the better you get. I'm not going to say I'm great at it. I think what I realize is, I'm loath to say because in every day I get charged, I get triggered. In lots of times throughout the day. So my only job is to bring myself back as often as I can. And that to me is a good day, because if I'm going to go, that's bad, and attribute, like my achiever self would want to say, I need to keep getting better. I need to keep getting better. But I think the whole thing about oneness and beautiful state is that it's not goal orientated to, your goal is only to be. So therefore you don't punish yourself or chastise yourself or say, I need to get better. You just are present with what is, recognize it and let it go. recognize it and let it go. That's your job. It's almost to me like sweeping. And because, you know, you see some mess, sweep it away. See some mess, sweep it away. That's what you're doing. You're just clearing the brain throughout the day. As you see yourself get stressed or something triggers you, sweep it away. It's not anything more than just a mess on the floor. Now, we make it mean something, that it somehow is bad or good or something, but what if it was just neutral? And then we can let it go.
You make it seem so simple.
Because part of me realized it is like, okay, so if I think of, again, throughout the day, we have our patterns and we see ourselves as a certain way, and therefore we have to do X, Y, Z because that's the type of person that we are. That already is causing you in some way to live in the past because you're living from an expectation of yourself in the past, of how you see yourself. And so the thing that I kind of learned by going there is, if you, again, don't judge and just see the moment for what it is, something's happening, you're having a reaction to it, but the reaction's not real. The reaction is based on a trigger from a past or a fear of the future. Well, then you can't just let it go. You can. Now, if you're not willing to, you need to look at what's the pain that's underneath that. And that's our job. Our job is to become good at discovering what the truth is. That's it. What's the truth of the situation?
I also like, and you kind of sweep a little bit over it as well. And I know you didn't do it on purpose, but I think it's something that really everybody who's here on the call is used to do. And yet we are also, I don't think we're pros to really stay still and realize, what am I really feeling? What's really the emotion? I think this is really hard work. I don't know if you guys agree, but you know, when we are in day-to-day life, most of the time we are reacting.
Yes.
And
okay.
No, go ahead.
That's where I bring it back to almost like the Dickens at the end, where you see it like a slideshow and you're in a bubble. You almost want to look at the images you have of yourself or of life as an image, and just see it as if you're in that bubble and you're going forward in your timeline, and you're just seeing it go past faster and faster, almost like you're doing a process with a participant. You're future pacing them or taking them through the time line, and just go, it is just a thought, it is just a self-image. It's when you associate with it, you're now making it part of your identity. So it's interesting because my first thought is, well, how are you living in the present? Like, could you be just trying to not really feel the real emotion by letting the self-image go past? Potentially, yes. But at the same time, I think what we don't realize what we're doing is every emotion that we go to with a memory from the past is us indulging in that association from the past. It's not true now. The truth now is looking at the memory or the trigger or the event and going, what am I feeling now? Why am I feeling that now? What's the feeling underneath? And when you can see that, that's when you release yourself from it.
So do you actually say something or have a thought that lets it release? Like, is there something that you do to actually make that disconnect, if you like, or that letting go?
They would say, or I would say, and awareness is enough, because the awareness is realizing that, because they would say that it's selfish. because you're in I consciousness, you're in self-consciousness. Anytime that you're going into an emotion from the past, you're in I consciousness. And the only way, well, not the only way, if you want to live in a beautiful state, you want to be in one consciousness. So I call it as being selfish. If I'm reacting to something, I'm being selfish because I'm reacting to the past, not to what's real now. And I'm missing out of what's around me, the joy of what's around me. I'm also not allowing myself to be in my highest consciousness to create more, because again, I'm stuck in the past. So just the simple act of bringing it to the mind now is enough, if you want to surrender it to dissolve it. Just to go, oh, that's what's happening. This is my reaction. What's the truth? The truth is, it's just a reaction. Well, then that's not what's real right now. Let it go. Asking yourself, what's the truth? What's the truth? What's the truth right now? Oh, it's just an image. I'm just challenging my own image. I'm just challenging, even when you have, for example, when somebody breaks a rule, when somebody else breaks your rule, and this doesn't mean that you have to tolerate, you can still keep boundaries. But let's say I have a scenario, for example, a friend broke a rule of mine recently, and I just went, well, that's not how I want to live my life. I don't want that kind of friendship. So I've let the friendship go. But I also had to look at the fact that, okay, she broke my rule. So what's the truth? In that scenario, my rule is X. What's the truth of the rule behind it? Well, I have a standard of X. But behind the standard of X, for example, she wasn't saying hello anymore because she was out of her comfort zone. And I have a rule, you always say hi to your friends no matter what else is going on. She said, well, I don't. So in my mind, I meant that means she values herself more than the friendship. And so then I have to go, well, why is that causing me stress? That she values herself more than the friendship? Because underneath I have a belief that friendships are kind and caring. So then I go again, well, what's under that that's causing me to be so charged? And then it's, well, I see myself as kind and caring. That's the truth. And so anything that's not kind and caring, I disown. That's the real truth. And when I can go through that layer of going, she does this, but I'm feeling this, well, what's underneath that and what's underneath that? All of a sudden I can just sit with that real emotion, and that brings a straight away a feeling of, well, to me, kindness and truth is everything. And if I don't feel kind and truthful, then I don't feel enough. That's where it comes back to. And it almost brings me back in a way to Tony's, I'm not good enough or I won't be loved. Somewhere in there, when we have rules or when something has happened, there is a deeper core if you ask yourself what it is underneath. And I think the more you ask yourself, what's the truth, you get faster at doing it in the moment. Sometimes, let's say you're like, Doris, you see clients, you have to move yourself through your reactions quite quickly because you're with a client. And so you don't want to be in your own ego, right? Judging them. So if you can just go to a layer of the truth and realize it's an untruth, that's enough. And then you might come back to it and revisit it again at the end of the night.
I think what I was referring to is, and because I'm seeing so many clients, it's not about me. I'm really looking more about the clients. Was talking more about the clients. I found that so many of my clients do not know what their emotions are at all. And I think we don't know. We don't practice all the time what's underneath, because there is an emotion, a reaction, but there is, as you said, so many layers. And I think this is the number one thing we must train ourselves to discover what's underneath that. What else am I feeling there? And I think we, when we are getting very hectic and very stressed, there's no time for that. We don't take the time. That's why the stillness is so important, getting still to really be able to listen to us and to feel what is it we feel.
I think when you can do exactly what you just mentioned, when you listen to ourselves and you feel what you feel, that in my mind, the achiever mind says you won't achieve everything if you do that because that's going to take more time. But the reality is you operate from a higher consciousness. You get more results in your life by slowing down. And I think if we really bought into that truth, that the slowing down actually allows us to achieve more, then we will give ourselves permission to feel.
And I think we have, and again, I can only speak from myself. I only understood that last year. Like the saying the Buddhists have, when you're in a hurry, you need to go slow.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or when you have no time to meditate for 20 minutes, sit down for 2 hours.
Yes.
I, for the first time, understood it last year. So really, like on a different level. Are your munchkins coming in?
They were. I shooed them away in a beautiful state.
Corina, have you found that happens, that since you've been living in a beautiful state so much more, that things have come more easily? That you've had that more result by slowing?
I can, so I'll give COVID as an example. For me, it was, who knew? You just, I'm sure this happened for everyone. It was one of those life scenarios where you really couldn't plan for it. There was nothing you could do. And so recognizing that, and then our life scenario changed a lot because Scott's work completely stopped. I'm like, right, how long is this lasting for? So it really is a scenario where every day I'm need to practice the beautiful state, because one of my top 2 needs is certainty. But going into the need for certainty other than internal certainty is a losing battle. So I think the work has allowed me to handle this situation so much better than I would have beforehand, because still there is no certainty when life will resume for us in the traditional way, for example, Scott's work, and he is our income provider in our home. And so there's a lot of trust that I have to have in him, and then trust in just making it happen. And it just allows me to look at the future differently. And I still have moments, definitely, where I go, ooh, stress. And then I go, well, what's the truth? What's the truth? So I feel it, whilst the emotions that still come up, I move through it faster. I don't know if I've answered your question. But I certainly feel like since doing the beautiful state, you just see more possibility. You see more possibility. And so that just allows better action, and better action equals better results.
Yeah, that makes, I guess part of what I was thinking is like about vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
That when we're at a higher vibration, we attract things at a different vibration. So beautiful state is obviously higher vibration than suffering state, because that's been part of because as I said, we've been forced to slow down, and things have completely taken a different tangent than they did a few months ago. And I've been sort of forced to slow down. So it's kind of just playing with that idea of saying, okay, if I can go slow, but still be in a beautiful state as much as possible, then things are still going to be creating, because I've been such an achiever and so busy doing for so long that I've kind of been forced back on my heels and just go, okay, you've got to just be. And I guess that's what I'm thinking. That's been my my belief that I've come to, because I was like, okay, that to make it okay to just be is that as long as I'm being, but I'm in a beautiful state as much as I can, then things are going to be coming anyway, that I don't have to go out. Yeah. It's more the feminine. It's coming into that feminine way of just attracting, rather than the masculine way of going out to do it. to kind of make it happen. You just attract it to you. So I was just interested to sort of get your thoughts, because obviously you've been practicing it for longer, to see whether things have happened. As you say, like, you're in a beautiful state. It's state, story, strategy, isn't it? So yes, state, story, strategy. That when we're in a beautiful state, we simply see things differently, and that opens up possibilities just in itself.
Yeah, I feel like the sentence Scott and I often say is, we're so lucky. We just feel so lucky for our life, and every single day, just every day focusing on the gratitude just multiplies that feeling just naturally, because you've practiced it more, so it becomes more of who you are. And in doing so, I do believe that there is a ripple effect. And as we look forward for the next steps, we're open. And so we see opportunities come. They just always seem to come. There always seems to be more opportunities. We go, great, okay, this is not what we expected to happen. What's next? Okay, well, now that's showing up. What's next? But when I say what's next, it's not with the urgency of needing it to happen. It's more of, oh, this is interesting. This is exciting. Let's see where this leads us. And in the oneness world, they talk about synchronicities. I think they say focus your attention to synchronicities happen in your life. I've genuinely always believed that I used to call it, now I know it as beautiful state. If you focus on positive things happen. And somehow my life has always turned out that way. And I really do believe it's true that, yes, you have to fish. You can't just sit and wait for someone to hand you the fish. So we still need to participate in our lives. But if we do participate from that beautiful state, I do think naturally things flow more effortlessly to you, or you become aware of more things that are already around you that you just didn't notice before. Even if you think about, we're all what are the 3 degrees of separation? I'm constantly amazed at the 3 degrees of separation of people. And if you're on a higher frequency, because opportunities often come through people, and if you're on a higher frequency, you're already naturally shifting the dynamic of the interaction with a third party, naturally, which that means you've elevated that interaction, so you don't know what's going to manifest out of that interaction just by being there. So they would say in one world that you just want to have that curiosity around you at all times, just to see what's around you, the possibilities that are around you. And that's one of the things that I love about Tony, is his constant curiosity, wanting to learn more. And in it, he's always finding new opportunities.
True.
But he's just in a beautiful state, I think.
I also think when things change, like Fiona, when you were saying, we were forced to stop and we were forced to slow down. I was feeling that too. And what I turned it around was using the word invitation as opposed to forced. So this is an invitation to slow down. This is an invitation to do things differently. This is an invitation to have a different perspective. This is an invitation to meet new people, to find new opportunity. And just that made it so much easier to, and I think that really came from that beautiful state training we did with Tad. It's like, we're not forced to do anything. We now have an opportunity in front of us to do something different, or to see it differently. And it's an invitation that we can choose to take or choose not to take. And I found that, like you said, that curiosity, what could this lead to? What else could this mean? It's that sort of line. And I found that came out of Tad's beautiful state, even though he didn't specifically use that word.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is just something different. Yeah.
Jackie, it's interesting. You say invitation, and I have a similar word that I use, sensation, to describe pain. When something is inside, I say, oh, what an interesting sensation. What does it mean? What is it teaching me? And then it's like it's lessen the reaction. And Corina, thank you so much. It was like a beautiful. I've spent 5 days in oneness, but it was a beautiful refresh and reminder. You've done such a beautiful job. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I wanted to ask you, what is the three? You said like 3 levels of separation. What is it?
Oh, 3 levels of separation. It's a good question. I must have said 3 levels of. Yes.
Isn't it about being, and I have no, because I know about the five degrees of separation. I don't know if you
Oh,
the same
yeah,
thing.
3 degrees of separation.
But the 5 degrees of separation is showing us that we are all connected, and we are really only, all of us are only 5 handshakes away from each other. So that we are one, and we influence one another, and we are very close together. Like in the world, there's always only 5 people between you and me. I know there's only 4 other people that I don't know. But then if you spin that thought, we all know each other. So we influence each other. If we are in a beautiful state, we are acting differently. And therefore we influence other people by showing up different. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I understood the 5 degrees of separation.
And Fiona, that's how those more that synchronicities will come. Knowing that, well, almost that 5 degrees of separation in a way, knowing that your state influences others, has that opportunity to bring so many more things into your realm just because you're in that higher place of that consciousness. Because if everything is 5 degrees of separation with people, then everything is really just a few arm lengths away from you.
Always.
But
I found that, yeah, the things do come when you're in that beautiful state. And just, I mean, I believe in synchronicities as well. And I sometimes have to believe in the synchronicities that happen in the ways that I don't want them to, as well as the synchronicities that happen as I would like them to. And I think just what Jackie was saying about being forced, to me, being forced is not such a bad thing, because it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because I was so busy just in that pattern of doing that for me, I had to be forced to stop. So it was quite good. I didn't have a choice. I'm in lockdown. I can't go anywhere. So that allowed me to come back. So it's a gift. It's a real gift in that being. And so just seeing what happens when you're in different vibrations and how different people react and what happens in the outside world. Yeah, being curious about it is a beautiful way of putting it.
Corina, I have a couple of questions actually. One is you had 3 steps to get out of suffering. What I've written down here is that the breath, notice the feeling that's coming up, and then you have the ability to dissolve it. Is that right? Is that the other 3 steps?
Yes.
Okay. The second question, and I'm not sure if I'm asking something that was the entire presentation that you've just given, so I'm just curious, is how would you so what I've kind of heard is the strategies to get into a beautiful state. If we're focused on the past, we're kind of drawn in stress. If we're focused on the future, there's a potential to be attached to fear. Yeah. So to get into a beautiful state is to be present, to be connected to truth. So that's the strategy to, I think, access, or some of the strategies to access beautiful states. Say, for instance, that we're at a date with destiny and we see one of our teammates or our leadership team, one of our trainers or ourselves. How do we recognize that they are in a beautiful state or not? And is that a triad?
I believe a beautiful state is a triad, because it has focus, language, and physiology to it, because it's an emotion. anything from neutral to positive, I think, is on the scale. Any emotion that's neutral or positive is a beautiful state. So your question is, how do you notice it in others? Or
how do you notice it in others, or how is it expressed in others?
In others. Well, my first thought is anyone that's either neutral, that's an interpretation. And it's interesting even as you say that, because my first thought, even as I answer, is our interpretations are always filtered by our past references, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have slowed down and are present, which means to breath, as simple as starting with present to breath. If you're present to breath, which we have time enough at a date with Destiny to do, then in that moment, you're now observing the other. And if you're observing the other, well, it's actually irrelevant if they're in a beautiful state or not. That's my answer, because your job is to be in a beautiful state. And when you notice someone who's not in a beautiful state, one of the things that they teach us is to just have compassion for the other, to recognize their feelings, which we all do as trainers so well when we have a participant who's hurting. But even just compassion for the room, if the energy is that you go in with just compassion for every human being in that room, or energetically via digitally doing it with the UPWs, going compassion for each and everyone who shows up, I do believe that that will lift the vibration, because your interaction with whoever you end up talking to is immediately affected. So I haven't really answered your question specifically, James. I mean, you can notice, because your feeling will be either neutral or positive or negative, and that will be an indication of whether or not they're in a beautiful state. But since beautiful state is about connection with yourself and the world, all that matters is that you found your internal state to be beautiful, and then the rest is irrelevant, because your internal state is going externally out to the world. So it's almost like you're projecting this white light out constantly with the intent of creating anything that's beautiful, whether that's wholeness, connection, healing, calm, peace.
Can I just say something on that? That sometimes for me, a beautiful state may not always look like a beautiful state to someone else. I mean, I've just been going, as most of you guys know, I've just lost a close friend of mine. And it was a funeral yesterday, and just the whole grieving process. To me, there's almost a beauty in that, that although to someone from the outside, it would look like, I mean, it's kind of a mixture of kind of a beautiful state, but a suffering state as well, because there's love in that. Like if I didn't, if I didn't have that love there, I wouldn't be grieving, and it was remembering that. So it's maybe getting stuck in a less resourceful state that we need to watch for, rather than people being in it at all. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just kind of...
I think that was my intention behind the question, is how is beautiful state expressed? And I think what I'm hearing is that it's expressed very differently from each and every person, and it's kind of coming from a beautiful state. We can recognize those myriads of beautiful states in different people. That there's, and even as you described it, Corina, in terms of the words you used in terms of emotion state, I think calm and at peace, and that was your words for what beautiful state might mean to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, but that could be anything on the spectrum that's neutral to positive. So we all have our, when we do the, there's even a number, how many emotions that we do in our daily lives and weeks. Ideally, we do expand our repertoire of emotions that we use. So if we think we need to expand the feelings of beautiful state, maybe look up, I use a thesaurus on Google all the time, and literally look up the word positivity and see what other words come up so that we can focus on those specific words to invoke feelings in our life. But yeah, it doesn't have to be, it can be expressed in so many ways. And Fiona, I remember the question coming up about when we were in India, about people being saying, well, how do you know when you're indulging? I still believe this is not about repressing emotions and not allowing yourself to feel. It's a recognition that you are feeling something and you are a feeling human being, and to feel loss and sadness is so okay. And it's to really learning not to judge yourself for the feelings that you're having. It's the judgment of how we see ourselves, our projected selves, that causes us pain and holds us in the past. Whereas beautiful state is an acknowledgement of feelings as they come, and an acknowledgement of our feelings and emotions. And when you acknowledge them, that they're just feelings of sadness or loss, you can release them. But it's the denial of them that causes us to resist them and then suppress them.
Yeah.
Whereas the acknowledgement is the surrendering to it, which allows us to let it go. So I think you can feel grief and sadness. Not you can, you should. They're normal human emotions to feel. And you hit the nail on the head before about it's just whether you choose to live there or stay in that emotion longer than might be necessary. That's when it's then harmful, I guess, or disempowering.
And I actually found exactly as you said, that I just let myself just after she died, I just let myself just go into whatever I was feeling. And that's one of the joys of lockdown, that I can't go anywhere anyway. I'm just doing a little bit of work a day so I could do that. And I found that by being in it for whatever it was and experiencing it, it left much faster than it probably would have done. I mean, it still goes in waves, but by going into it and just feeling it and being whatever needed to be, whether it was scream, shout, cry, whatever it was, it then just suddenly it just went. It was beautiful. But I think if you tried to sit on it and stop it, it would be much tougher journey.
It's going to keep coming up anyway.
Exactly. So I just went, well, I've got space, and might as well go visit it and just see what's here.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly.
I think one of the biggest decisions, or one of the biggest things I got from all the beautiful state training, is that choosing to live in a beautiful state is a moment by moment decision. That was a huge kind of revelation for me, is that there's moment by moment we get the opportunity to choose, and that we can always come back to a beautiful state, or we can choose something different. But choosing a beautiful state is always available to us, moment by moment.
I also think what Corina said, as you use the muscle of asking what's under that and what's below that, and delayering, you get faster at it. So if we don't spend time in the emotion, we kind of not ask, and we quickly trying to get out of it, then we're also missing, this is what I feel, we're missing that opportunity to uncover what the truth is underneath and behind it. So it might feel like we're spending more than those couple of minutes or the 30 seconds of permission to be in that less than resourceful state, but it's also the gift to yourself to spend time there, to really dig under, to see what they are, if that makes sense.
And noticing if that emotion is bringing in the past or the future. It's the awareness of the emotion allows us to in some way dissolve it, or the awareness of it releases the energy of that emotion.
That's right. There's a great book.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, there's a great book called The Journey by Brandon Bays. I don't know if any of you know it. Okay, yep. Many of you do. I just love that book. If you haven't read it, it's one of those books that allows you to, there's a process in there as part of the book that allows you to help feel feelings. So if that's not something you have practiced a lot in your life, or there's feelings that you might need to bring up, you can either go do something called the journey work. You find a journey practitioner, they just take you through a process. That's right, Doris just posted it. Do a journey workshop near you. or at least read the book. It's a really easy read, but I think it's a great process for helping you dissolve emotions if you feel you have some that are stored.
And to on that, you know, many things you said is so the work. What's her name?
Byron Katie.
Byron.
Because all we do in the work is realize it, what we think. It's like all she does is we suffer when we believe our thoughts. That's what you said. So it is. We believe what we think, we suffer.
And who are we without that thought?
Who are we?
Who are we without this thought? And
yes.
And then we release it. It's like, boom. And she has, I very often from the work, from the homepage website, I download, she has a list of emotions and I hand it to my clients. So at least they have a template of some emotions, because some people only know good, bad, anger, shame. You're done. So.
Corina, thank you so much. I know you've got a house full of small beings running around who are probably waiting for breakfast or reading or whatever they might be waiting on you for. So we don't want to hold you up any longer, but it's been wonderful. Thank you really for sharing your wisdom with us. It's really greatly appreciated and a great reminder.
Thank you so much for asking me. I really, really enjoyed being able to do this. I'm hoping I met your desired outcomes. Because I'm happy to say I'm not an expert at this. I just, I fell in love with it. In my bucket list, it's constantly to go back to India to do more of their work, because I know very few places where you just get to be still and feel and slow down. And that's probably part of my attraction to that work, is when you go there, it's just like a Tony world is all consuming. The oneness world is all consuming, but in a stillness way, which we've kind of gotten with COVID now anyway. Maybe that's what the world needed, was a still reset. I will leave you with one quick process for you can write it down for yourself. That would be really good. It's one you do for the evening meditation or end of the day. And for it, there's just 4 parts to it, and it's quite easy. Number 1 is so you capture and review the magic moments of the day. So you invoke the feeling of presence, and you're stacking all the good memories and the great experiences of the day. And so you associate to them and you feel gratitude, see them, feel them, breathe them in, like an emotional flood. 2, ask yourself if you gave pain to anyone today. If so, invoke that feeling, feel their pain and ask for forgiveness by bringing the image of the person before you. And 3, ask yourself if you feel any pain from your interaction with others. So again, invoke that presence, that feeling, affirm the truth, which all pain is not in the fact, but the perception of the fact. So the pain is not outside, it's inside. Feel the pain, stay with it until it becomes forgiveness or joy. So that's an easy way moving forward for you just to surrender to the emotions that come up, so they don't become triggers for you down the track. And then number 4, bless all those who have touched your life today. Bring before you images and faces of everyone who's touched you today. Bless them and give thanks. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a beautiful state. And sorry, the Ho'oponopono, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry. In a way, it's kind of a shortened summary. I mean, a longer version of doing the Ho'oponopono, because except that you get to do multiple people that you get to focus on for your day experience. And that's it. You just do that kind of emotional flood for the day of gratitude, surrender yourself from any pain you've caused, surrender your own internal pain, and then bless everyone around you and yourself.
And Corina, may I ask you, where did you learn how to pronounce Ho'oponopono? I was taught in Hawaii it's Ho'oponopono, and you say Ho'oponopono. What's the correct way?
Sorry, I have no idea. That was just my interpretation of the reading, of reading the word.
It's Ho'oponopono. All right, I just thought maybe it's in India they pronounce it differently.
No, they have never mentioned that word. I'm just weaving in everything I know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corina. Have a magnificent day.
Thank you so
It was so nice to see all of your faces.
You too,
I
honey.
wish you